Today our lesson is going to be on linear functions. At the top of your notes it should say reteach worksheet. You need to write the learning target on there for today. Our learning target is I can represent linear functions using function tables and graphs. I can represent linear functions using function tables and graphs. Linear functions. Sometimes functions are written using two variables. One variable, usually x, represents the domain, and the other variable, usually y, represents the range. Now we've already talked about domain and range before this lesson, so you should know that the domain goes with our x values and the range goes with our y values. In order to graph a linear function, step 1 says to choose some values for x and use these values to make a function table. So if we look here, they chose these x values. They chose to use 0, 1, 2, and 3. Those are typically some pretty good numbers to choose for our function table because they're typically on the graph. But sometimes we may choose some that are off the graph. So we want to make sure we've got at least 3 points on our graph before we can connect them and make a line. Step 2 is to graph the ordered pairs on a coordinate plane. Draw a line that passes through these points, and the line is the graph of the linear function. So if you notice in this example, they've plotted all 4 of these points here. And then once they did that, they drew the line that connected them. Notice how the line keeps extending past those points, and it has arrows on the end because this line does not stop just because our graph runs out of space. This line would keep going forever in that direction. All right, let's fill in number 1 together. It says complete the function table, then graph the function. So if you notice, here is our equation, y equals x plus 3, or our function. All right, so we want to use this as our rule. So this second column here is called the rule. This tells us what we actually want to do with that x value. Now they already gave us some x values here, so we don't have to choose them. We're just going to use them to complete the table. So if x is negative 2 and my rule is x plus 3, instead of x, I'm going to replace it with a negative 2. So I have negative 2 plus 3. Underneath that, I've got 0 plus 3. Then they chose 1, so 1 plus 3. And last, they chose 2, so 2 plus 3. Now for the third column, y, that's what this actually equals, so what our rule is equal to. So negative 2 plus 3, if we add those, negative 2 plus 3 gives us a positive 1. 0 plus 3 gives us positive 3. 1 plus 3, positive 4. And 2 plus 3 is positive 5. Now our last column in our table is just the ordered pair. So if you notice, we've got our x value here. We've got our y value here. Now we're just going to need to write it as an ordered pair. Remember, you've got to use parentheses. Our x in this one was negative 2. Our y value was 1. Our y coordinate was 1. Second row, we've got 0 for x and 3 for y. Third row, we've got 1 for x and 4 for y. And last row, we've got 2 for x and 5 for y. Now, our second step here, we're going to graph these ordered pairs. Now, unless they tell you, then the graph is counting by ones. We assume that. So, negative 2, 1. To graph that, I'm starting at the origin. I move left 2, up 1, and put a dot. 0, 3, I'm going to start at the origin. 0 tells me I don't move left or right. I just move up 3. So I need a dot here. 1, 4 tells me to move right 1 and up 4. So that's here. And then 2, 5 tells me to move right 2 and up 5. So that would be right here. All right, so we've plotted our 4 points. Because these are linear functions, they should be straight lines. So connecting our dots and putting arrows on the end, that is the graph of our function. All right, let's look at number 2. On number 2, they did not provide you with a table, so I've got a sheet on the back of your notes for you, there are some tables where you can use to fill this in. All right, so they did not give us any x values, but we see here we've got positive 3 times x plus 2 as our rule. So whatever y equals, we fill in for that second column. So our rule here is 3 times x plus 2. Some values, I'm just going to choose -1, 0, 1, and 2, and we'll see what happens there. Remember, again, you've got to have 3 points on there before you connect them. All right, so if I fill in my rule, I'm going to have 3 instead of x. I'm replacing it with a -1 and then plus 2. Second row, I've got 3 times 0 plus 2. Third row, 3 times 1 plus 2. And fourth row, 3 times 2 plus 2. Okay, for my y column, we need to actually work this out. 3 times -1 gives me -3, plus 2 would give me -1. Second row, 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Third row, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And fourth row, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Last part of our function table, we need to fill in the ordered pairs. So for my first row, I've got -1, -1. My second row, I've got 0, 2. Third row, 1 for my x, 5 for my y. And fourth row, 2 for my x, 8 for my y. Now we need to graph these. Now again, this is counting by ones. So my first ordered pair, -1, -1, tells me left 1, down 1. My second ordered pair, 0, 2, tells me don't move left or right, move up 2, put a dot. The third one, 1, 5, tells me move right 1 and up 5, so that would be right here. Now my fourth one, 2, 8, is going to go off the graph. However, I only need 3 points, and I've got 3 points, so I can go ahead and connect them without that one. So connecting those points, we get this line. And that would be the graph of our function. Now, if I only had 2 points on the line, then I might need to go and try another value. So let's just say that 1 did not fit on my graph for the x value of 1. Then I would have said, okay, let me go back and try -2. And I could have just made another row of my table and filled in -2 to see if it would fit on my graph as well. All right, number 3, our rule in this one, we've got y equals 2 minus x. So 2 minus x goes right there in our second column for the rule. Again, our x values, we're just going to choose some different values. So I'm going to choose -1, 0, 1, and 2. You could choose different values. They don't have to be the same ones. Choosing them around the origin, though, is going to be the most helpful for you. All right, so filling this in, 2 minus -1. My rule for the first row. 2 minus 0, second row. 2 minus 1 for the third row, and 2 minus 2 for the fourth row. Working this out, 2 minus -1 is the same as 2 plus 1, so that's just 3. 2 minus 0 is just 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, and 2 minus 2 is 0. Filling in our ordered pairs, we've got -1, 3, 0, 2, 1, 1, and 2, 0. Graphing these, -1, 3 tells me left 1, up 3. 0, 2 tells me don't move left or right, just go up 2. 1, 1 tells me right 1, up 1. And 2, 0 tells me right 2, and don't go up or down any, stay on that x-axis. So all 4 of my points fit. I'm going to draw my line through these and put arrows on the ends to show that it is going to continue on. All right, number 4, last one like this. I'm going to take 3x minus 1. I'm going to fill it into that second column for my rule. Filling in a few of these, let's see, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Let's try those first. Substituting them into our rule, 3 times -1 minus 1. 3 times 0 minus 1. 3 times 1 minus 1. And 3 times 2 minus 1. Working those out, 3 times -1 is -3, minus 1 is -4. 3 times 0 is 0, minus 1 is -1. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 1 gives us 2. And 3 times 2 is 6, minus 1 gives us 5. So our ordered pairs, we've got -1, -4. We've got 0, -1, 1, 2, and last 2, 5. So graphing these now, -1, -4 tells me left 1, down 4. 0, -1 tells me stay at the origin and then go down 1. 1, 2 tells me right 1, up 2. And 2, 5, right 2, up 5. This is going to be a very steep line. All right, connecting those dots. Easier on your paper. All right, connect those dots as best you can. Put arrows on the ends to show that this is going to continue on off of our graph. All right, so now I'm going to give you a skills practice worksheet to complete, very similar to what we just did. When you finish this worksheet, you're going to turn it into the green basket. And then I need for you to log on to Canvas under Modules. You're going to click on Quizlet for Unit 4 Vocab. You're going to practice these vocab words. You can use any of the practice on there, the study, the flashcards. You can use the games, the practice test, anything on Quizlet to help you practice these vocabulary words for our test on that next week. If the internet doesn't work, just study your written copy of the definitions so that you're prepared for that vocab test.